Welcome back to Mindful Endeavors. Joining us today is Evan Cardin. And before we get into our discussion for today, of course, we encourage people to seek mental help if you need it. This is a disclaimer letting you guys know that we're just here to have conversations around mental health and making sure that we keep those conversations going around that topic. If you do need help, if you do feel like you're alone, feel free to reach out and definitely seek a medical professional, and we always encourage that, and we definitely encourage to keep the conversation going. So, all right, so we have Evan. Evan, you reached out to me on social media about specifically the podcast because you heard me on the 12 Hike podcast when I was on there, which
Yep.
definitely appreciate, and I'm always happy to have you on. So, really quick, let everybody know more or less a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on. Like I said, I really enjoyed your episode on 12 Hike, and it really drew me to your podcast because mental health and the outdoors are two things that I am very passionate about, two things that I have had plenty of experience with throughout my life, and continue to experience today. But my name is Evan. I am 21 years old. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, and then I moved up to the Green Bay area for college. I got a job up here working at a bank, and that's what I do during the day. My girlfriend and I get out and fish as much as we possibly can. And yeah, that's kind of about me. Nothing too crazy. I just I really, really like the outdoors, and I figured that we could get some really good conversations going, and hopefully, at the very least, help spread awareness and, maybe help somebody make someone's day. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. This is basically to cover the outdoors because the outdoors, it's very fun. It's something that I enjoy doing as well. I got into it kind of late in my life, but the only thing I regretted was not getting into it a lot sooner.
Right.
And because this whole podcast was really sparked around COVID, since mental health was in vast decline. It was already declining before COVID, and then that kind of just tanked it really bad. And I was really getting upset that nobody was really talking about it. So I figured it was time to at least try to do something about it, and thus this podcast was born. And I figured let's try tying the outdoors a little bit, because maybe through that conversation people can get inspired to actually go explore the outdoors, explore it properly, especially inviting guests that have more experience in the outdoors than I do. And also it allows me to learn more or less either struggles that I may not see, for whatever reason, that other people are seeing, like outdoor, out in the public, or whether it's personal experience. So that's kind of why I started this podcast. And I don't regret the decision at all. Sometimes it's a lot of work. Sometimes it's, a little bit easier, but yeah, like you said, as long as we're spreading awareness, that's the most important thing. And that's the one thing that I hope that people do get out of this, as always. And if anything, if it helps people to kind of find the outdoors and use that as a coping mechanism, then, that's a huge, huge bonus. But at the very least, I just want to make sure that these conversations keep going, because it's not, and we also live in a very heavily politicized time right now, I think more than ever. And so, the nuance gets lost all the time. We don't really discuss it the way we should. So that's another reason why. And but first, before we go in and talk about that, we're going to go ahead and kind of talk about, something that's kind of a little bit more lighthearted, which is spring fishing, because, that's coming up. It's basically like a couple of days away officially,
Yeah.
Depending on where you are in the country, it's already been, spring fishing because it's the weather.
Mm-hmm.
But so for me, this is actually my first full year of fishing, because I started fishing back in April of last year. So I didn't really start the spring fishing like proper.
Gotcha.
So yeah, man. So what's the best thing about it? I know you live in Wisconsin, so that's kind of a little bit difficult in the sense, because you're coming off of snow and freezing water and stuff like that. So I don't know. Share your experience.
Yeah. Well, we just got snowed on yesterday again. It was warming up for a little bit. Everything has finally melted, which is good. but the fish are still super slow and out deep. So it's tough to get a bite. But probably my favorite thing about the fishing here during the spring is how aggressive the fish get, because they're not usually insanely aggressive. And during spawn and when they're up and around beds, you can pretty much throw anything at them and they chase it and snap at it, and it's a ton of fun. And spring fishing is also awesome for me because it's the first time that, you know, we can get out during the year after everything has frozen over. And I'm not a huge ice fisherman. I actually have never even been ice fishing. I have some stuff, but I didn't get out this year. So it can suck waiting all winter long until everything opens up again. But that's very exciting that you get your full, kind of get all the seasons there. That's going to be a good time, and you'll be able to see, you know, the behavior changes and how the weather will affect the fish down there. I'm sure you guys, are you guys up into spawn yet, or is it pre-spawn still? I guess, how has the weather been down there?
I think it's already transitioning into spawn, but yeah, like pre-spawn, I think it's still, like I said, like the last few days, you know,
Sure.
there's only a few days left for like pre-spawn. But yeah, like I have noticed different things like that, you know, hit better during these months versus, you know, the spring months. And like, and I always thought that was kind of, you know, crazy. And I was just like, why? I mean, it's the same freaking fish. Like, you know, obviously
Right.
me being, you know, a noob and everything, it's the same freaking fish. Like, why is it like, you know, different? Like when it's summertime versus when it's springtime. And yeah, like I was just like the first time I threw anything out there, I don't know why, you know, feel free to judge. I threw a small crankbait on a
Okay.
spinning reel, a light spinning reel, for some reason with the weight on it. So
Nice.
yeah, they had a little split shot, or actually had two split shots on it, and
Mm-hmm.
it would not wiggle the way it's supposed to, like,
Yeah.
you know, swim in the water. And that was my first time casting. So
Okay.
yeah, so and I was basically teaching myself how to do that. Like the first what is it, like maybe 2 days, I was just watching YouTube videos on how to cast with a
Right.
spinning reel because that's what I had available.
Yeah.
Um, with summertime, well, once I kind of figured that out and I was able to actually like Texas rig a, you know, worm for the very first time, I was just throwing red worms all day, and I was just catching fish like that just because
Yeah.
red, right? So,
That's
and
cool.
then yeah, I mean, pretty much like it's really fun seeing that, like, okay, this time it's anything red, but like very slow. Like, and this was like April, right? So it was still a little bit slower to get the bite. But then like within less than 3 weeks after I started fishing, like it was just like the little poppers, just throwing that top water,
Yes. I love
getting
top
that.
water. Top water is so much fun.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Like it was just but you know the funny thing though, like, cause like this is what like helped me be more of a patient person and helped me definitely decompress mentally, was because when I threw you know, one of those little poppers, like I would just reel, pause. And then during the pause, it was just like there was like for like the first few times that I started throwing it out, I was like very impulsive to just start reeling fast right away.
Uh-huh.
But then after a few times, like there was like I got a feeling that the fish is gonna bite on this one. And then I left it there for like almost a minute, and then bam,
Yep.
fish bit on it. And I'm like, holy crap, I was right, dude. And I was like, you know, like that feeling was just, dude, I can't describe it. It's just one of those things you have to kind of get out there and do.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, there's certainly nothing like a good top water blow up. I mean, that's one of my favorite things to throw in the summer. Like I said, I just moved, or well, previously when we were talking, I just moved. I had a pond out in my backyard at the old apartment that would just get, it would be glass when over the summers a lot of the mornings, and so I would go out, throw poppers, frogs, buzz baits, and it was pretty much guaranteed one fish a morning on that. And that's just so much fun when you know you can go out there and you'll catch something and it's something that you enjoy throwing. I guess I did have a question for you. So you said that you got into fishing last April, right?
Mm-hmm.
This was during COVID, because
Mm-hmm.
everything shut down. And this, were you just thinking, this? Did you have any past experiences with fishing in the outdoors, really, or did you just say screw it, like I just want to try this out?
The most outdoorsy I was before fishing was probably I was a little bit more of a hiker.
Okay.
But I mean, I always used to play like basketball outside, soccer and everything. So having the COVID come up and being like, okay, well, this is a time where you're kind of discouraged from having any kind of close proximities within another human or even contact with another human. Um, so yeah, so before that, definitely more of the hiking part was the hiking activity was more the outdoors that I basically knew, and I was living out in California, so it was there's a lot of terrain, a lot of landscape to do that, and I did go what is it saltwater fishing a lot. Well, not a lot, but a few times beforehand. But I mean, it wasn't like any kind of lure fishing or anything like that. I was basically just throwing, I guess the equivalent of like a drop shot with like some live bait or just cut up
Yeah.
squid and then catching fish that way, which was fun because I mean, like the one experience I did have when the first time I went doing that, my buddy took me out there. One of our other buddies, like also a first timer, got
Mm-hmm.
really seasick.
Oh.
So, so it was funny watching him kind of just like struggle through that, but at the same time, like damn, poor guy.
Yeah.
I kind of did get a little seasick, but I got over it really quickly. And for the first 30 minutes or so, I was struggling just trying to make sure I did not like cross anybody else's line.
Uh-huh.
I was pissed because it was a charter, so it wasn't like we had a boat or anything. We were
Okay.
on a charter,
Yeah.
and I was pissing off people quite a bit. So yeah, that was my first experience in doing that. And once I was able to actually cast properly, I cast out one last time before they were actually they took off the anchor and they were driving the boat.
Mm-hmm.
So they were driving the boat. My line was still out there. I was the only one out there, and I felt a bite right before the engine took off. So now the engine's taking off this way, and the fish is pulling me the opposite direction. So I'm like thinking, oh, this is a big fish. And by the time I finally reel it in, like after like 6 minutes of battling with it, it's a tiny little fish, like barely like
Wow.
4 inches.
You're fighting the boat almost.
I was basically fighting the boat. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of the reason why. So when I moved to Texas, my buddy was, well, before that same buddy that took me fishing, he was upset because we were supposed to, I was supposed to be his fishing buddy. He was kind of grooming me into trying to be that. But, I moved, I had bought an ugly stick as soon as I got here.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first rod and reel combo I had. And it was just sitting there for a year, until COVID happened. And I was just kind of going a little stir crazy because I was like, okay, I'm hitting up people. I'm like, hey, how do you feel about this? Are you really afraid? Do you have any reason why you should be like, taking care of yourself? Like, i.e., like, are you immune? What is it? Are you immune compromised? Do you have somebody in your household that's immune compromised? Like things like that. And then a bunch of people were, because it was something new, right? And like a bunch of people were like a little afraid, so they didn't want to really go out and stuff. So I was going stir crazy. I saw a rod, and I'm like, you know what? Nobody's keeping me from going to a park, so I'm just gonna go try to fish.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it.
That's awesome. A similar thing kind of happened with me. I grew up fishing a lot. My grandpa was a huge fisherman, and he took me out all the time, every chance he had when he would visit. He taught me pretty much everything I knew. And so I did a lot of fishing up through high school. But once I graduated high school and went off to college, I kind of stopped because I didn't really have a lot of places around, and I was just doing other stuff at the time. I played golf in college. I was focused on that. I was focused on school, hanging out with my friends, having fun and a good time at school. So I just really didn't get out fishing. And then COVID hit, and I was like, man, I got nothing to do here. I can't go out. I can't hang out with my friends all the time. And I had a $40 Walmart combo that I just brought from home when I moved up here, just, cause I figured why not? And, we went out my girlfriend and I went out to our apartment pond at that other place. And we just started tossing around. And that first summer, when COVID hit, she just killed me fishing. I don't know what was going on, but I could not catch a fish in that pond, and she was reeling them in left and right. But eventually, after I started to kind of refresh my memory on all the techniques and everything, and I started watching a ton of YouTube, and then I was able to start catching fish. And then it kind of just took off from there. I absolutely fell in love with it more than I ever have in my life. And it's something I do as much as I can. This past year was the first time that I've actually gone out and done any hunting. Since where I grew up, my mom was not a very outdoorsy person. I grew up with my mom, and she didn't like guns. She didn't want me to do any of that. So I just never grew up with that. And moving up to Wisconsin, it's a huge thing up here in Green Bay. Like people take 50% of the people at the bank will take off opening day of deer season for work, and it's crazy. But coming up to Wisconsin has truly opened my eyes, I guess, to the endless opportunities we have around here, and whether it's fishing or hunting or exploring the outdoors in general. That is something that has taken over my life, I guess, since COVID, and I love it. It's amazing.
It's very interesting because I've talked to, once I got into fishing, probably within 6 months after I actually started back in April, right? I started talking to local shop owners, and some of them, they're just it's really amazing, because it's amazing in a sense because there's a lot of new anglers out there. So I think even the guys at Bass Pro were like, this is insane. We've never had a year like this. Last spring, bass season was not like this at all. All the rods, we were struggling to keep reels, and it was really it was even more difficult because certain stuff that was being imported from certain places, from certain countries, since they had even stricter guidelines for COVID, they weren't producing as much. Even here, with the kayak situation, a lot of manufacturers were not producing any kayaks because, again, either for whatever reason, the COVID, somebody either was infected in COVID at the factory, or the restrictions just, they had to rearrange how they're set up or what have you.
Yeah.
Even right now that stuff is starting to open up, it's still the demand is still really high, and the supply is still struggling to keep up with prior demand. I bought a St. Croix rod, and that was my first American-made rod ever.
Nice.
Well, I've only had the ugly stick beforehand, so I guess it's not really much of a much of a big deal
right now. You can't beat the ugly sticks.
Yeah, absolutely not. I'm trying to stick to buying more goods here in the U.S., but when it comes to quality, the ugly stick, I'm sorry, you just can't argue with results.
It's a great, and especially for beginners, since they have really reasonably priced combos. I just went out because I said I had my one combo when I started, but my girlfriend didn't have one, so I just went out and bought her, a $40-$50 combo at Cabela's, and it was an ugly stick, and she had nothing but luck on it. But St. Croix, I've not ever had a St. Croix rod, but I have heard nothing but good things about them.
So the funny thing is that the one, the Premier series that I have, that one, I broke it once because I was trying to land a fish, and it was only maybe 3.5, 4 pounds ish, somewhere around there. And I put the rod to the side and was trying to get it by the line. It was right at the bank already, right at the edge. And all of a sudden I just hear it go, it just snaps. I'm like, no way.
Jeez.
And it broke. But, St. Croix, because it was still within the year, right? St. Croix had stood behind their quality and everything. So they sent me a new one pretty quickly, because I got lucky that I caught one of the manufacturing runs that was handling warranties and such. So they sent me one within 2 weeks. But then within 2 weeks from when I got it, it broke again in the same situation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I was just like, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm trying just to land a normal fish.
Yeah.
And again, St. Croix, they're like, no problems. Like, we'll send it back, send it back, to us and we'll send you a new one.
That's
So,
awesome. And that's how you keep your customers. That's for sure. I mean,
oh,
not a lot of places will do that, especially twice, you know?
mhm.
And so that's really good. That definitely encourages me to look into their stuff then.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I mean, at the very least, maybe cause I mean, I've never heard of anybody really breaking it that way. And for me, it was just like, all right, well, maybe the first one that's at least, St. Croix took care of me, and that kind of stuff is really, really, really like, I mean, it matters a lot to me. Like, honestly, like
Yeah,
if, because
definitely.
people make mistakes and stuff like that. Like sometimes things go wrong, and if, they're trying to right their wrong, then that's all that matters to me. But, but yeah, so there's a lot of new anglers out there now. That may be a good thing depending on who you talk to. That may be a bad thing depending on who you talk to.
Yeah.
So, I know that when I first told people about this podcast and what I was trying to do in terms of like how I was trying to put my own spin on the mental health topic, I got one response which was like, we don't need new people just crowding out the ponds and all that stuff. And I'm just like, I mean, they were joking, right? But they weren't too serious. But I was just like,
But they
I
weren't,
mean,
they were kind of serious.
well, there's a little bit of truth in there, right? There's a little bit like, yeah. So, but it's one of those things where like, like as long as like you're just being cool with each other, like, and yeah, now that I mean, the little bit that I know, I just kind of like share with people. Like if I see a kid struggling with like how to like tie something, I'll just show them the knot that was basically taught to me,
Hmm.
and things like that. So, because I mean, it's all about just kind of like knowing how to coexist, and then also like again through fishing, like I don't really have to prove anything to anybody or anything, or myself even for that matter. Like it made me a lot more like you know level headed and more down to earth than I ever thought I was. And somebody that kind of struggled with pride, that definitely, like for me, admitting that is a lot. And
Yeah.
so
Well,
it's one of those things.
that's awesome. Good for you. That certainly can be something that's tough to even think about, much less admit to, me and your listeners and, everybody else that in your life. I mean, it can be tough. So, good on you.
Thanks, man. And like that's kind of why I want to at least have this conversations, because they'll definitely help. And if people ask like, oh, can you teach me how to fish? No problem. I mean, I'll teach you what I know. It's not gonna be like the best thing ever. I mean, but there's certain YouTubers that I follow a lot, and
Hmm.
I learn through them. And I kind of want to do the same thing, but at the same time, it's like, well, I kind of want to do my own thing, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so in regards to just spring fishing in general, like I used to hear all the jargon, all the technical words for things like that, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What's this? What's that? I'm just gonna throw something out there.
Right.
But over time, it developed into I actually got techniques, and I learned different techniques. And Instagram definitely, that's kind of like why it's like a weird, like I don't know if you can, what's the right term to call it, but it's kind of like not necessarily a necessary evil, but it's kind of like one of those things that like it's good to have, but at the same
Well,
time, if you don't, yeah, double-edged sword. There you go, a double-edged sword. That's perfect. That's a perfect way of saying it. Because I mean, it's one of those things where if you let it control your life, then we're gonna, you get depressed and things like that, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But you know, now like that I have this, especially with spring coming up, like talking to different people, like, hey, what do you do? What do you do in this situation? Like, I have no problem asking. Like, a lot of people may have that problem, like to ask, people's questions. I mean, people for questions and stuff like that.
right.
Especially me that I don't have the background. Like, you grew up fishing. It's a little bit harder for me to just kind of like pick it up faster, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm with you on the whole like hunting. I've never really hunted. Well, I mean, dove hunted
Right.
before, but once really. It wasn't really like it wasn't a thing for me. Especially because like got into firearms really late as well. I got into bows really really late, and yeah, like now I kind of prefer a compound bow if I want to go hunting versus, a rifle, but I'm
Nice.
down to do both. Doesn't really matter.
That's cool. Do you deer hunt then mainly?
I want to get into that. I know that because of the snowstorm that Texas had, um, I think I don't know if they did it across the entire state, but I know in certain areas they shut down
Oh, really?
deer hunting.
Wow, that's sad. I did not hear about that. Interesting.
Yeah, because I think like some ridiculous number just froze to death because I mean they're not used to it, right? So
Right.
yeah, so that's kind of like one of those things where I mean it even affects humans. Like I don't know if you saw like this like the news where people were like freezing and you
Yeah,
know yeah.
it's crazy because that's something that I've just I just grew up with, and snow is comes with winter and freezing temperatures and negative 30 degrees below, and but then if you think about it, like we have all the mechanisms to respond to that because it happens every single year and we're prepared. And it's not normal for Texas to get that cold and that much snow and all that kind of stuff, and it can really really screw up a lot of different things there, and it did, which it was sad to see all the like that massive pile up that happened, and then people that were they were free, like all the power that was shut down, like that was terrible. um but it's just crazy how that type of weather can drastically affect one part of the country versus another.
Yeah, and in a previous episode, I actually talked about that with the buddy that actually got me into the outdoors. Because he and I mean, we're talking about different settings though. Like he and I like both grew up without anything. He grew up more in like a kind of a more rural setting versus
Okay.
me more of a city setting. And we just kind of had to struggle and make do with what we had. And like one of the things we kept poking fun at, but at the same time we were kind of serious, is like because he was telling me like, what is this about like me hearing that people don't even have like manual can openers? And I'm like, yeah, that was a thing, and I was very surprised that was a thing because I talked to a lot of people and just texting them like, hey, you okay, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were like, well, all I'm stuck eating right now are like chips and cookies or whatever, it's in the pantry. And I'm like, you don't have cans of tuna? Yeah, but no can opener. Like, and to me, it was just like, because I've I know there's electric can openers, but it just
Yes.
never registered in my head like, you have an electric can, like, do you not have a manual can opener? Because that's all I worked with my entire life. Like, because it's been the struggle bus ever since I can remember, right? So like now it's to the point where I'm so stubborn that even if it's something that's convenient, I'm like, nope, I'm gonna do it the hard way,
Yeah.
just because I know I can, or because I want to be challenged.
Right. And I mean, that's a great, I mean, it's a good thing to have. It's certainly a good mindset to have, and in the fact that I'm sure that you're not sitting there taking anything for granted. You're not you know acting like an entitled little jerk to people, or it's and like that's a problem today with a lot of people throughout our country, I think, is that everyone just thinks they deserve everything. And I think that, so I appreciate hearing that mindset because it's becoming fewer and farther between.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, like I always tell some people, like when I joke about it, like, yeah, I'll complain about something, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna stop doing it. Like, it's like I may complain, and that's purely just to keep myself entertained, really, which is kind of, I don't know, cynical, I guess you can say.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know if you ever had that kind of experience where it's like, oh man, I have to, I don't know, change the oil or build something from scratch, but then it's like, but I still want to do it because that's why I'm still doing it. I find myself here,
Right.
and it's definitely something that we've discussed in the past where it's like, we've fallen for a lot of convenience products, and even when you look at like fishing, like certain fishing has gone a long way, right? And there's a lot more technology now that makes it super super simple, especially when you're like kayaking or in the boat, right? You have fish finders and things like that, which I mean, I'm not opposed to it, but it's like, okay, I am the fish finder.
Exactly.
That kind of.
Yeah. I like that analogy. That's a good one. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's castable fish finders that you can use for bank fishing now. I was looking at those the other day. I mean, well, heck, like, why would I not try it out? You know, I feel
Yeah.
like I might be, because I don't have a boat, I don't have a kayak. Like, all I do is I bank fish, and then we wade in trout streams around here. Um,
Mm.
and so, I mean, if we're just fishing random ponds, casting something like that out could help. But like you said, it kind of takes, one reason that I absolutely love fishing is the creativity, and, you know, how you can, it's all up to you to what you want to do. You look at the situation, you say, like, what's the wind? What's the water like? You know, what kind of fish are in here? Is there structure? Is this grass? Is it rocky? And you can do whatever the heck you want, and you can throw whatever you want. You can make it as crazy as you want or as simple as you want. And that's one thing that I really, really love. And that's another reason that I don't really enjoy ice fishing that much, is because I don't want to just sit there and pop, 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 pop and wait till I get a bite. So,
Now, so my question for you is that basically, so you got the creativity going from fishing and even other areas of the outdoors. Specifically right now we're talking fishing, right? But how, like, this is just kind of to connect a little bit more to the mental health aspect. Like, how does that, like, now kind of, like, does that really, like, change the way you see other things, other activities, other information that you consume, like, outside of fishing? Like, how did that, affect, reflect, how did that change your, your point of view in the sense of, like, what comes in now?
sure. So I guess, in regards to, like, how I view fishing in relation to my mental health, fishing and the outdoors for me is sort of an escape, I guess. And I feel like a lot of people can say that, and it's kind of cliche, but it is what it is. Like, it's something that when I go fishing, I can just go fishing and I worry about catching fish, and that's all. That's it. It takes my mind off of, whatever I have going on at work, or like, with, if I have any crap going on with my family, or if it's just like stuff that I'm dealing with personally. Um, Fishing is a way for me to give myself a break from that, and just kind of relax and enjoy some time to myself. Or especially with my girlfriend, I love going fishing with her. That's my favorite thing in the world to do. And so it's, I guess I'll just give a little bit of background about me and my mental health. Um, I am not shy to talk about this stuff. I never have been. And I think that, which is why I really appreciate what you're doing here, because not a lot of people are okay with talking about it. And thankfully, I'm blessed to be able to just talk with people pretty well, pretty easily, just naturally. Um, so my whole life, I struggled pretty badly with anxiety. Um, and in high school, that started to turn into depression as well. I was, just the classic, you know, I just never wanted to do anything. I didn't want to be with anybody. I just wasn't happy. I was not living a life that was fun to live, or a life that I should have been. And
Mm.
so, my senior year of high school, was it was probably the worst my anxiety had ever been. Um, I was having multiple panic attacks a day, to the point where I would, like, black out for briefly, like, just see black. I don't know what it was. It was the weirdest thing ever. Um, and I was driving my car to school, and I blacked out while I was driving, and I crashed my car. Luckily, nobody got hurt. I didn't get hurt. Um, and that was kind of my wake up call. I was like, look, you got to do something about this, because my girlfriend at the time, she was like, she was saying, like, you might have anxiety, you might. And I was like, no, I had that when I was a kid. I'm over that now. And not something that you can just say, you can just push off and be like, no, I don't. There's nothing's wrong with me. And to be honest, I don't like to look at it in the light of this is that something that's wrong with you, because it's not. It's not a disability that people want to classify it as. It's your brain is literally just wired differently, and
Yeah.
that's how it is. Um, and so then I talked to my doctor. I started medicine. I, actually started treating it seriously. It was a pretty big problem throughout college still.
Mm.
And with COVID, that made a lot of my specific, like travel specific anxiety. Traveling gives me a lot of anxiety. And with being locked down and just getting used to being home 24/7, especially since I was able to work from home, I was just used to being there, and I hated going outside. And so fishing was my first step back into kind of that normalcy where it's not so bad to the point where I can't leave the house or anything. It was just like, I just didn't feel comfortable leaving all the time. And I didn't feel comfortable with driving places or, going to visit people. And
Yeah.
so even when I would just go out on my own, it would help me, and it would give me the motivation to say, okay, I want to go here and fish. I want to go here. And then I would, drive an hour somewhere, and I would drive 2 hours this way, and I would go fishing. And then since it would give me something to look forward to and give a positive association with traveling instead of
Mm.
freaking out about it. And so that's kind of how fishing has helped me a lot recently. Um, Fishing in the outdoors in general, it's just my favorite thing in the world is just being outside, and it's so beautiful. I enjoyed every single part of it, and it really, really helps a lot. And it's something that has I've been able to build on as I go, whether it's, I drive 30 minutes here, or the next weekend I'll go an hour, or the next I'll go 2 hours.
Okay.
And so it has just really helped me kind of get back into that normal routine of feeling comfortable going out and doing things that COVID had kind of made me shut down and try to get away from.
First of all, thank you for sharing that. Like you said, not many people are very open to sharing their experience, and I definitely appreciate you sharing that on the podcast, and for other people to listen to, and hopefully either they relate, and hopefully some people that never had to go through that
Yeah.
now see somebody around them that kind of goes through the anxiety, and maybe it makes them kind of help them to relate to what other people are struggling with.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I mean, me personally, like my anxiety has, like, it's never been a huge issue
Okay.
for an extended period of times, but it has been an issue. Definitely anxiety kind of leads into depression. So
Yeah.
for me, that kind of definitely, I felt that firsthand when, COVID happened, because the personality that I am, just, I like to, I mean, I'd like to talk to people really. Yeah. So
I crave human interaction, and it sucked. It was hard. I totally
yeah.
understand what you're saying.
Yeah. And then, it's really tough, especially because, you know, especially with younger people, like younger kids, like we're not really younger boys really, uh and it goes all the way through like adulthood, like you're not really encouraged to speak freely, because certain things like, oh well, just toughen up, which
Yeah.
I've talked about this before with prior guests. For some people a kick in the butt helps, for some
Yeah.
people that will break them, like, and so it's like when we're talking about mental health, it's not a one size fits all type of thing.
Right.
And also you made a good point where it's like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with you. Like when we're looking something as what, I mean, I guess people think is simple. I'm doing air quotes for those that are not watching and just listening. For something that's kind of considered simple, like OCD, like you know, that does not define somebody. Like you said, it's
Yeah.
just because something is wired differently, and you know, there might be a reason why, in terms of our evolution, we're wired that way. Because we're not living like hunter gathering times.
Yeah.
We're not living in those situations now. We're in the very we have concrete jungles now and everything. So for why that was, why people are wired that way. I personally can't really say much on that, but I just know that people are wired differently, and that has to be because if we're all wired the same way. Like, I'll just use again COVID for example. Like, you look at, like, there has been healthy people that have died from COVID,
Mm-hmm.
and if we were all wired like that specific, like a one specific healthy person that had nothing, no comorbidity beforehand, and COVID just completely killed them or her, if we're all wired that same way, we will all be wiped out
Right.
instantly. So there's definitely, we definitely need to kind of recognize that it may not be like favorable, I guess you can say, to
Yeah.
be wired a certain way in a certain situation, but that doesn't mean that they're just dead weight, or they're just baggage, right? Like, we have to stop treating like mental health that way. And that's kind of what I want to get to, like different, like, unconventional coping mechanisms that we have come across. Like, I know for me, like I was asked you earlier, um, so fishing definitely helped me be more patient, which definitely triggered my anxiety, like I said, at just various points in time. And it definitely allowed me to kind of just let go of stuff a lot easier.
Yep.
Different things that were like really tiny. And I can say that now because, I mean, and objectively, I can see that. And I'm like, okay, why am I stressing out over this? Like, definitely, like, I can look at myself and be like, okay, there's just nothing that I need to stress over.
Yeah.
Um, like, just something as like, okay, my girl didn't text me back. Okay. She didn't want to talk to me. I just have to deal with it. Like, she didn't want to talk to me for whatever reason. I cannot dwell on that because
Right.
now I'm stifling my growth, and I'm stifling my, my progression in life and everything. Something like that. Right. So for me, like, fishing helped me apply a different viewpoint, or I guess put on a different lens
Mm-hmm.
into how I see certain things, and actually be more patient and not be so like rushed in things. And all right, you know, be patient and everything.
That's really good. That's great to hear. And like you said, you made a good point when you said that. Looking back, it's 2020, and you can say, "Oh, this was the stupidest thing ever. Why was I worried?" But in the moment, it feels like your world is falling apart, and it feels like you have no control over anything, and it's just the worst thing ever. And whether that's because you're just taking it too seriously, or it's because that's how your brain's wired and that's how you're wired to think. I mean, you can look back and say, yeah, oh, I shouldn't have been worried about that. That was stupid. But I think that people need to understand that for people that do struggle with these kind of things, it could be the stupidest thing, like, that you look at. I mean, your room could just be super dirty, and that could set somebody off, or like anything. And you could look at that and be like, okay, that's super ridiculous. Like, come on, just snap out of it. That's dumb. But it's not that's not how it works.
Exactly.
You can't do that. And that's something that when I was younger, I experienced a lot. They were just like, when I would have a panic attack or be super anxious about something, people would be like, just get over it. Like, you're fine. Nothing's going to happen. Just stop freaking out and you'll be okay. I'm like, okay, if I could stop freaking out right now, I would have. I don't want to be doing this right now. I don't enjoy having a panic attack. And so I think that stigma of, like you said, that swift kick in the butt, it's certainly not right for all people. And like you said, some people it can help, but some people you can say that and it won't do anything. And oftentimes it'll just make the situation worse.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I want to try to avoid when we talk about these things. Like, make sure that if it's something that resonates with somebody, and they need to talk about it further, that's what I'm trying to encourage. Like, if you feel that maybe it's like maybe your experience, like, somebody might feel that, okay, well, I can definitely take up fishing to help me with my anxiety. if people feel that they can try that, that's also encouraged as well, right? But at the same time, it's like I can't really say, because I'm not in everybody else's shoes, right? Like, so even like something where like growing up, like I would see somebody kind of like just staring at a wall for some odd reason, just because they couldn't break focus off one specific thing. I was like, well, that's dumb, right? Like, and
Yeah.
I'll admit to that, that was probably like because I didn't know any better. But
Mm-hmm.
now it's like, well, there's a reason why they're staring at a wall, and like it's not the same anymore. Where it's like, oh well, we'll just toughen up and everything. Like, no, like you know, you really can't. I mean, you can try to say that. I guess you can say like just kind of like test the waters, but at the same time, like if you're gonna die on that hill, it's not a one size fits all application. You're gonna like you try to motivate somebody that way. That's not You're not being a very good motivator, thinking that okay, I have a group of 10 people, they're all gonna react the same. They
Yeah.
might, you might get lucky. You might get all 10 people that react the same way. You might
Right.
get 7 of them that react the way you think they're gonna react. You might get only one. It's like, and like that's the thing that's like we need to talk about more, because you know it's really tough, because like I look at like social media, right, and it's going back to like what we're talking about in terms of depression. Like people look at like certain figures in social media and think, that's how I need to live. That's how we should be living. Like if I'm happy, I'm doing that. But it's like, no, I mean, you can try it. You're more than welcome to try it, but get the expectation that what worked for them and not necessarily work for somebody else. Like, those are the type of things where I would say they're a little bit more unconventional in a sense, because I don't really hear it, it talked about a lot. I don't know if it's just because of maybe I'm not researching the right thing, but like one of the things that again, going back to the can opener thing,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I'm not saying like struggle, like purposely put yourself in a situation where you need to struggle, right? I'm not like, if you can avoid it, avoid it. But that little struggle, definitely, like, well, when we do get to the point where we struggle, like, I think we do need to be better at analyzing the situation. Like, was this just me flipping out over something? Was it just me that I just cannot control it? Now I know that if it's something that I can't control, now I know that I need to do my best to make sure I don't end up in that position.
Right.
And we can go about it that way. And that, what that position is, what that stressor is, what you need to do to prevent that situation from happening varies from person to person, right?
Yeah. And it's definitely not a one size fits all thing and a one size fits all solution. But I mean, I know a lot of people that struggle with mental health in various different ways, whether
Mm-hmm.
similar to me, like anxiety and depression, or like my brother he's autistic and but he is very high functioning. And he was actually just diagnosed. He's 19 and he was just diagnosed like 2 months ago.
Wow.
And because he was smart, he could talk to people, but it was a very, very big struggle for him.
Yeah.
And so and the way that people deal with things, like the way that he deals with his anxiety is different than how I deal with my anxiety, is different than how my best friend deals with his anxiety. It's completely different, which is, I think it's awesome that you are having a lot of different people on here, because hearing different perspectives, it could help just one person, and that could completely change their life. And you may never know, but it could have that effect. And I hope that at the very least, this conversation that we're having is opening people's eyes a little bit. And if people can relate, hopefully they will either feel better about it, know that they're not going through it alone, know that nothing is wrong with them. You're not messed up. You're not a freak, you're not, I think that for me personally, dealing with my anxiety and depression throughout my whole life, it has made me a much nicer and more empathetic person, because I know how I feel when I'm going through tough times like that. And I just never want to put anybody else in a situation like that. That's why I like to spread kindness as much as I can, and why I love, you know, I recently started my Instagram account that we first talked on, and there's all the super super famous people on Instagram that have hundreds of thousands of followers, and they don't talk to the people that comment on their stuff. And I mean, by no means am I saying that I'm a huge account or anything, but like, I always try my best to reply to all my comments, to reply to all my messages, and use my platform as a vehicle for spreading kindness and helping people out, making people, answering their questions, or just talking with them if they want to talk. Like you said, I think that I would, if anybody listening to this wants to talk or needs to talk, I mean, I am not a health professional in any means, but I will do anything I can. I will talk. I will, I just really feel that it's very important to help other people in similar situations, because not everybody has a great support system that they can fall back on. I was fortunate to have a pretty good support system in my family my whole life, that they helped me out a ton, but not everyone has that. And some people just need that one lifeline. And I would love to help people out as much as I can.
Yeah, and that's very respectable, because I mean, not a lot of people take time to do that. I mean, and again, their time is their time, right? So again, however they want to choose to use it, utilize it, it's on them. We can't really fault anybody for doing that. But at least that you're not necessarily putting out bad. That's all, we can really ask for somebody, right? As long as you're not putting anything bad, that's fine. I mean, some people, like we talked, like I didn't really cover this earlier, but for example, some dudes, we like to like give not necessarily a hard time to somebody, but we like to like get along that way. For some people, it's fine. For other people, it's not.
Right.
And sometimes we don't really know where they're coming from for them not to be comfortable to talk smack or whatever. Just even though we know we're both playing around, right? Or so like for example, me, like if I give somebody a hard time, I know I'm playing around, but the other person might not know, or I don't necessarily know if that, and I hate to use this word, but that kind of triggers a bad memory or bad experience with somebody, like because I don't know a whole lot of the person, right? And even like sometimes when I've seen this happen multiple times, like sometimes like even people that are like friends for like 2 years, 3 years, or even 4 years, they don't like it. They don't really find anything that triggers the other person until like the 4th year. They finally struck a nerve, and it's really tough. Really, like that's kind of the reason why I just try to make sure that I try at least kind of like advocate that, we do try to empathize with certain reactions before we start, just kind of jumping to conclusions, right?
Yeah.
So again, the key thing, patience, which definitely for me, we got through fishing, we got through hiking and stuff like that. I know this is going to be counterintuitive, and I'm kind of almost like contradicting myself. I know me personally, coming from me, the best way to motivate myself is if I break myself down. So like saying you're a piece of crap, you got to do better. That I know that's for me though. Like that's the thing. Like I know that's just a me thing. Like I'm not going to treat the same like another person. I'm not going to treat you or somebody else if I want to motivate them that way, And like I do have a background in like, jiu-jitsu and kickboxing, and some of the smartest people, either, in the mainstream or just people that I've met over time, they will look at you and be like, this is more of an analogy, but they'll look at you and be like, okay, you can't strike the way I'm teaching you. Well, you must suck.
Yeah.
That's a bad teacher. Like, because we have to kind of look at like, oh, well, you may not strike this way because there's something in your anatomy preventing you to do the motion the way I was taught. So now I have to figure out how to overcome that or adjust to your anatomical structure or whatever. And that's the same thing when you look at people that are trying to inspire on Instagram, social media, whatever, it also falls, the accountability falls on us as well to kind of look at them and be like, okay, if it worked for them, it could work for me. It may not work for me.
Right.
But at the same time, and I've said this multiple times before on the podcast, we gotta look at somebody like if we're like right now we're both like on Instagram, we're just building up fishing accounts or whatever, or outdoors accounts.
Yep.
I'm not trying to be any other famous person. I'm not trying to be the next this person. I'm just trying to be the first me. That's
right.
Basically, and that's the accountability that I'm talking about. Like we have to kind of hold ourselves accountable to that.
100%.
Another thing too, like again, it goes back to when we talked about earlier, or I think maybe off the podcast or at the beginning, where the nuance goes out the window when we kind of like hyperpolarize on a certain issue. And where I'm getting at is like when you look at like the terms for certain mental health disorders, especially like when you're talking about the military, the words have changed, but the issue is still the same.
Yeah.
And I think we get caught up arguing about what words are appropriate to use, but we're not tackling the issue. And that's kind of where I want to talk about. Like, this is the issue. Call it whatever you want to call it. It does not stop making it an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Unless it's something completely different, and that's a new word, fine. But the same issue doesn't need to have 4 or 5 different facelifts. It's not going to go away. It's still the same thing, and we're not addressing it.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. I think I guess I echo what you're saying. It's just people, we are raising awareness, by saying mental health is important and everyone needs to be, check in on your friends, check in on your loved ones. But people don't actually dive into how we can change this. They try to scratch the surface or just make that, oh, hey, I'm checking in on my friend, I'm a good person, and I did my part, and that's as much as I can do here. But I think that it seems that we are kind of turning a corner as a country and as a people here to really actually place a heavier importance on this, because it affects so many people, and so many people are coming out and saying, I'm not a huge fan of the celebrities all coming out and saying, oh, I've struggled with this my whole life, blah, blah, blah. And, because I don't think that they're very relatable, to be honest. And they're trying to be more relatable, which I appreciate in some of them. But it's like, don't try to politicize this issue. Don't make this something that you can try to just boost your platform on. It's not. That's how it is. That's not how it should be treated, and it needs to be taken more seriously, because it's very, very serious, and it affects so many people every single day. And like most people probably don't even know that their neighbor or their best friend or their cousin, is dealing with this every single day. And so what you're doing is awesome, and I love the mission of this podcast, and I really, really appreciate you giving me the chance to kind of share my story and be a part of this, because I fully support your mission here.
Thank you, man. I mean, honestly, all I can really hope is that I'm doing this topic justice, really. And I mean, again, I'm blending in the outdoors. I'm blending that in. I mean, just because that's what I'm passionate about, especially more now than ever. And most of the guests that I have tend to be passionate about the outdoors in one shape or form. Sometimes they don't even know that hiking is a form of the outdoors. Like, and it's like, no, I mean, that's you're basically outside, going outside, pulling up a yoga mat, going out in the lawn, meditating out there. I consider that outdoors. I mean,
yeah.
Anything that's outside, which is kind of like where we're supposed to be thriving, really. I mean, granted that we're supposed to have shelters and stuff, but nowadays, we spend a lot of time indoors we're connecting to the internet, but we're disconnecting from humanity a lot of times. And you brought up celebrities, and I'm only using them as an example because, I mean, it's not just celebrities. There's a lot of people that, I'm not singling out anybody in particular or anything like that, but in my honest opinion, I do feel that there's some people that see, like the mental health advocacy or even just awareness as a charity, which me personally, I know that there's charities that do well, but I don't like to really use the word charity, or I don't necessarily like to use the word sympathy, right? Because it's like it almost feels, at least to me, and I'm not trying to push this on anybody else, but I'm just trying to, again, in my honest and humble opinion, I feel like those words kind of disagree. Like you look down on someone, where
Yeah.
it's like I don't know if you've heard that meme or you've seen that. It's a little cliche, but where it's like, true leaders, like they get down and pick people up versus,
Yep.
extend their hand, right? Or something like that. I mean, I may be botching it a little bit, but that's kind of how I feel, when you use like words like empathy and you actually, live by like empathy, where it's like you're trying to at least relate to the person so you can help understand them. So you're trying to get to their level, and it's not that being at a lower level is necessarily a bad thing, but, you're trying to be at their level to understand and better help people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so like that's the thing. Like when people see it as charity, it's not really taken as serious. I don't really feel like it really is, and it's not really relatable because again, it goes back to the one size fits all type of thing, where it's like the approach that you might be taking may be good-hearted or maybe just charity, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's not. Is it realistic? Probably not.
Yeah.
So, but all right, so we've hit the 1 hour mark, and any last final thoughts that you want to? I know we kind of really went a little deep, and it was a little bit dark, but it was still a very great discussion, and I honestly encourage these discussions because they need to be had a little bit more. But anything you want to add? Any final thoughts?
I don't think so. I really, really appreciate you having me on. Thank you very much. This was awesome. I really enjoyed talking with you this past hour and in the past as well. I am looking forward to seeing where this podcast goes and all the lives that it changes, because I seriously do believe you're doing an awesome thing here. But I guess just to leave everyone with, if I just had to leave it with something, I would say there is always somewhere to go. There's always somebody to talk to, whether you have nobody else but a hotline number that you need to call, or the police or the fire department. Like if there's always somebody, and I would highly encourage people to find that somebody and find that outlet that can help support them. Because once you have somebody or something, I guess, like fishing and the outdoors, it can completely be a life changer. And if anybody ever needs to talk, please feel free to reach out to my Instagram. I do my best to reply to everybody that messages or comments and stuff. So I would be glad to talk to anybody about any of this stuff. So thanks again. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll be talking again sometime.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's obviously like, I'm not just being like, oh, I'm gonna cut you off and like that's it, no, like definitely we'll keep in touch. And to my final thought to add to what you're saying, like, yeah, seek help if you feel you need it. Don't be afraid to seek help. Don't be afraid of just talking about it. Like, well, we need to stop. We need to lose that fear of like, oh, if I talk about it, is it gonna make me sound weak? Is I gonna come off as weak? It doesn't matter. Like the important thing is that you talk. I mean, sometimes a talk might be enough. You never know. Also on the other end of that, like if somebody is trying to reach out, I mean, again, your time is your time. I encourage at least to point people into the right direction, or at least just lend an ear. I mean, even I know me personally, like sometimes I don't know what to say, but I definitely listen, and that's sometimes that might be more than enough, honestly. And I'm not saying one size fits all, but yeah. And then the most important thing that kind of talked about in the last few minutes is like, again, let's not get caught up in talking about what word to use, what appropriate word to use. Let's actually tackle the issue and just talk about it, really.
Yeah.
So all right, before we hop off, where so what is your Instagram handle so that people can actually reach you?
It is edc.outdoors. And then my personal account is just evan.carden, CARDEN. Yeah, I can be reached. I always have my phone on me. So if anyone wants to talk, please feel free to reach out.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'll also, when I make the post, I'll put your handle on there. And when this video goes on YouTube, it'll also be on there as well. For those that are listening, again, it's edc.outdoors. And then his personal handle, evan.carden, CARDEN. And then also, thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing your experience. I know, I mean, like you said, you're an open book, but sometimes it's a little bit, for certain people, it might be hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just happy that, we have the opportunity to talk, and you're here and thriving. And I'm more, and honestly, I'm really glad that, in your case, fishing, was the first step to actually, I guess, I don't know if redemption is the right word, but,
Right. Yeah. Back on that course to normalcy,
There you go. Yeah. I mean, again, I'm glad that you look, honestly, like from when I see you on social media and everything, you look good. When we talked about, you look like you're definitely working through it. So yeah, man, that's always good to hear.
Yeah. Awesome. I appreciate that. It's a new account. Like I said, I've been doing my best, and it's just a lot of fun. I like we talked about, I crave human interaction, and in a time where it's tough to, maybe go out and meet new people face to face, this has been super awesome. I've met a lot of great people and been able to do super awesome things like this. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And honestly, I know this podcast, I think this episode has probably been like, I mean, I'm just gonna say the word dark, but because it's a very heavy topic, right? But this probably has been, it's kind of weird because it started off really lighthearted when we're talking about fishing, we're talking about all the good stuff, and then went into something a little bit deeper, which again I have no problem with, and honestly, it's just about getting the message out. So again, Evan, thank you so much for having me, and we'll talk soon.
All righty, sounds good. Thank you very much.
All right, everybody else, hope you enjoy for the next episode, and hope you join for the next episode, and hope you enjoyed the conversation.